Quest Demon Hunter is a new archetype in the UnGoro expansion. The idea behind the archetype is that when you deal 2 damage to your opponent in any way, it means that it continues the quest. And once the quest is active, you need to play a 5 cost minion down, which is an 8/8. And then its battle cry is that each of your times that your 2 damage attacks deal something to the opponent, it deals an extra 2 damage. So there's a lot of the different cards in this deck that do make and deal 2 damage, which obviously is essentially a side game sort of idea behind it. The big part of the deck that's especially important with this Tavern Brawl is that you're using it to essentially have the Blob of Tars and the Ravenous Fell Hunters. Those are very important in this deck in terms of making sure that you're getting to your later game. Insect Claw obviously is quite a powerful card as well to be able to get your quest completed, but ultimately your idea is that you're trying to get those Blob of Tars out as soon as possible to be able to get them active, and then the Fell Hunter helps keep your board clear while you're then building up your wasps or your other 2 damage attacks to then be able to deal lethal to your opponent through the extra damage that comes from it. So the cards that you're looking to mulligan for, you're obviously keeping the quest, and then you're looking at keeping things like Blob of Tar, you're looking at keeping your insect claw, you're looking at keeping your wasps sometimes, depending on which archetype you're playing. If you're playing against Paladin, you do want to keep the Fellfire Blaze plus either the Hive spell or the 2-mana Chaos Strike, because ultimately those are ways that you can enable your AoE to deal damage to your opponent. Another card that's decent in that matchup is your Slumber, so the 3-mana Slumber, which can deal the AoE, or it can summon the dormant minions. But ultimately the idea is that you do get the Tar out, because it allows you to essentially have a safe position for what your opponent could be dealing into you, and then you just keep building up tempo from there. I'm not 100% sure how this archetype will look and work after the change for the new expansion, but once the expansion launches, it's not the Tavern Brawl, but currently in this Tavern Brawl it is quite powerful in terms of dealing with your opponent's boards and also being able to deal quite a lot of damage coming from hand. Going into the gameplay, you'll see that I am currently on turn 6, and I am just going face. There's no point trading into that 4-3, because they're going to need to trade into me anyway, and instead of them dealing 4 damage AoE to everything, they only can deal 1 on their turn, which ultimately also activates my Wasp to be able to then get an extra hit down onto it as well. So the Wasp, in reality, is that you are going to be able to get those 1-mana spells out to deal a lot of damage to your opponent through it. They end up using their Upu. The AoE with the Fan of Knives obviously is hitting my Wasp, which is giving me more of the 1-mana spells to be able to use on my opponent as well. So essentially the game is done from that position, unless they had a heal, which they obviously won't. So yeah, the idea is, like, I didn't end up getting the quest active on this game here, but because of the fact that I did have a lot of board control and tempo, it didn't particularly matter. And that's also the benefit of the spell. Because of the spell, you are able to deal the extra 2 damage just going face if you need to, and then obviously you can use the grubs to trade as well, so it does get your quest activated quite quickly. But yeah, you do want to get the Blob of Tar out quickly to make sure that you are getting that ready. An idea that could potentially be changed for this deck if you are having trouble with getting your Blob of Tar out is that you use the Tusk 1-mana weapon Tusk, and then you can use that with your hero power to deal 2 damage, and that probably is one of the stronger ways to go about it. In terms of my mulligan just then, I just kept all of the hand. If they do end up going aggressive into me, I can just go coin out the Insect Claw, which would then be able to trade into pretty much anything they could potentially play down. So I'm not too worried about if they do or not take that out. I end up just using the studies here to be able to get an extra card, and I end up choosing the Wayward Sage here just to be able to reduce down the cost of my cards, because mana cheating is always going to be good. I'm not going to use the Hive map here just because of the fact that I do want to get the extra value from it just in case, because they potentially could be going for the long game here. I end up getting the end up using the hive map just to be able to check what I can get into. Ultimately, I do have a few different options. I just choose the Chaos Strike here just to be able to get it out onto the board. And then I choose the Fumigate, which can ultimately help trade into what I end up dealing with here as well. I just hit into the flame. I just hit into the flame totem, and then I just clear it with the Fumigate. It potentially was a better play getting the insect grub out, but it does leave them open to a potential difficulty coming from it. I do have the Blob of Tar here as well, so they're 4/4. They will have to trade in, and if they are going to take it out, so it's not in any regards too bad of a position. I do find that the spear is potentially a card that I potentially cut, especially once you get more cards. The tusk would probably be better in that sort of situation, so yeah, it is a potential idea that I would consider getting rid of. I just use here the Slumber to be able to get my 2 extra dormant minions out. I could have chose to do the 2 AoE to be able to deal with their board, but they're not really sitting in a position that's really very scary to me. They end up playing the Viper down here, which was quite important for them to be able to obviously clear my weapon, because I'd be getting closer to the quest by doing that, and also it is applying a bit of pressure towards them. I end up just here playing down the Wasp, because they don't have anything on their board currently threatening it, and getting the extra spell down onto the board is going to be really powerful for me. They end up just going face here, and then they end up upgrading their 3/4 into another minion. It ends up becoming the Umbra. This turn I end up making a mistake, so you'll see that my dormant minion ends up getting stronger here, and then I use the Chaos Strike to end up AoE clearing, and I then use another Chaos Strike, so I do have quite a lot of damage here that I could potentially use, but I ended up using the hero power. That was a mistake that I ended up doing here, because then I wouldn't be able to trade well into them, and I wouldn't be able to deal that face damage, just simply because they could have quite a bit of damage that came out of their hand. So the better play in that situation wouldn't have been using the hero power, it would have been holding the hero power, going face with my 7 damage, or still trading possibly, but I would have taken 4 less damage, and then using the spell to clear the 6/4. They end up imbuing their minion, and it becomes an 8/7 now. It ends up turning my Wasp into a 1/1, which is a little bit unfortunate for me, because of the fact that it is then a little bit more difficult to clear. A positive of it, though, is the fact that with the 1/1, I can use it to still trade into the 8/6, and then I can use my other spells to be able to go into them as well. I use my 2 stingers onto their minion, and then I just trade into it using that. I use the 2/2 as well here just to trade into 4/2, just to deal the damage. Since they're already at 30 health, it didn't particularly matter dealing that damage to face or not. They end up using Black Knight here, which is a little bit tricky for me. I do obviously have the spear here, and I have the AoE if I need to as well, so I am sitting in a perfectly fine position. They imbue on their Black Knight, and it gives them the 5/7, which is fine. I then draw into an Insect Claw, but it's probably not the right turn to be using that. I deal the 2 damage AoE to them just to be able to make sure that I can get the clear happening, and I can also then get the quest online as well. With the quest coming online, it does mean that I'll be able to then deal with their 5/5 here, while also getting my Wasp ready to go for the next, for the future turn. I just send my Wasp face, and since it does have the quest active, I do get to deal with the extra 2 damage as well. With the 8/8 on my board as well, I am posing a bit of damage towards them. They end up using the Big Game Hunter here, which is a little bit tricky for me and not the most ideal thing. And then they also play down the Fire Elemental, so they do have quite a strong board here as well. It is especially important that I do clear their board here. Unfortunately, with the Grim Harvest I just got, it didn't do anything particularly well for me. I do end up using another Grim Harvest just to see what I can end up getting coming from it, and then I get an Infestation down through it as well. So with the Infestation, I can send some of the damage to face on them, and then I can use the the 2/1 to be able to trade into the elemental, just to get it cleared from the board, because obviously with 1 health I'd lose next turn. They end up getting their 8/8 taunt, which is going to be able to have a decent threat towards me, and I do have the grub here as well. I play down the Lord Xavius here just to see what I can end up getting, and I do end up getting the Nemola. And the idea behind that is, since it has Reborn, it's going to be able to rush into them and clear this turn as well, because of the extra 2 damage that comes from their AoE, and then I can use my other minions just to go face. Since they didn't have any way to deal lethal damage last turn, I'm assuming that they won't be able to deal lethal this turn, and they essentially just got put back into the same position. They end up playing down the Living Garden here. It gets them an extra imbue, but it's not particularly too much of a concern for me. And then they play down their Spirits of the Forest, but with my gnome on the field, it does mean that I can pretty much clear whatever they could potentially have, and then I can obviously deal the face damage with the other minions that are here as well. So yeah, like, it's... Once I got the quest online, the damage obviously started building up with all the different AoEs and such. But yeah, you can deal quite a bit to your opponent over those future turns, and with the AoE, since you're dealing the 2 extra damage as well once you get it, a 4 damage AoE for 3 mana is always going to be quite good. The next game is going into Priest, so a lot of the Priest archetypes are quite aggressive. You are wanting to establish tempo in these sorts of matchups, so I just keep the questing assistant, and I also keep the Lord Xavius, and obviously the quest. I play down the quest on turn 1 because that is generally the best play that you're going to do. And then next turn I can use the 2 mana minion to be able to trade into anything if I need to. They play down the Firefly, so yeah, it's not really posing too much of a threat towards me. And with the 3/2, it means that next turn when they play something down, I can probably out-trade that quite easily as well. So they end up playing the Lunar Wing Messenger down. It does get them their imbue, but since I am controlling the board, that is the most important part of dealing with this archetype that I'm against. And I do use the Insect Claw here to trade into their 3/2, because a lot of them aren't using any AoE, they're just using the T, the Nightmare Tea. If they ended up having the Nightmare Tea there, it would have been a potential problem for me, but ultimately it didn't end up showing out through that. I just play down the Lord Xavius here just to see what I end up getting. Once again, I am looking for like Blob of Tar to be able to get onto the board. Unfortunately, I don't end up getting it, but the Wasp is going to be a relatively strong card for this turn as well. It could have potentially been an issue for it if I had if they ended up having some sort of AoE or their imbue got a Shadow Word Death, but I'm not needing to really play around that too much, simply because of the fact that I do want to make sure that I'm building up my own pressure against them. I do obviously draw into the Wasp because that was my top card. I play the Defiled Spear, and then I'm just going to use the Defiled Spear just to trade into the 1/2, and it does end up hitting the poisonous one as well. I just needed to hit one of the minions just to make sure the board was clear, just in case they ended up getting the Jug onto me, because if they played the Jug down with a wide board, it is always going to be quite difficult to end up getting back that tempo. They end up playing down their Conjurers here, which does take some of my spells, and then they also play down the Spirit too, which is a little bit problematic for me. I play down the Wasp here and I just pass. There's no point trading with my weapon at the moment. I don't really want them to deal any extra damage. And they do play down the Fell Hunter here as well, so with the Fell Hunter they are going to be able to get their Blob of Tar out with it, so I need to make sure that with my Wasp I am not trading into that and giving them an extra chance to get value coming from it. I use my weapon to trade into the to go into their face, and it does hit their Fell Hunter, which is fine. And then I use my spell to be able to then trade into their 1/2, just because I am trying to get their board nice and clear, and I don't really want to be dealing with too much that's coming from it. They end up using the Priestess here just to be able to get essentially a full clear down onto my minions. and then they end up getting another Priestess, so they're getting more imbues down. And then with their Ravenous Hydra, they are able to deal some more damage to me against the Wasp that I have. I do end up drawing into a Slumber here, which is quite strong, because I can deal with a lot of damage to their board. It potentially was a better play there using the weapon first, but it's not too much of an issue from that. My Colossus ends up getting active this turn as well, which is good for me. And I do obviously have the Grub here too. I end up using my Wasp to trade into their 1 damage minion. It gets me an extra proc if I need to. And then I'm just using their minions here to clear their board, because once again, the idea is that I am getting their board cleared and I'm dealing with as much as they have, rather than just not dealing with the minions. I end up using the 2-1 here just to hit into their poisonous minion. I could have gone face and then traded the Grub, but since they didn't have any clear before, I didn't think they'd have another clear then. Unfortunately, I do end up having one, which is fine. I'm not really too concerned, because I do have my quest in my hand now, the 5-mana quest minion, and they're using the T's now to deal damage to my minion. They end up drawing into the Elemental here, so I do just play down the Colossus just to be able to then deal with it. There isn't any major point going face here because of the fact that they will get the health back with the 8 extra health. And I do play down the Stealth minion here as well, just because it's applying extra pressure, and with the extra power that comes from it, it deals 2 extra damage, and with the 2 extra damage that it comes from, it's dealing another 2 extra damage, because of the fact that it is dealing that AoE. They end up getting Shadow Word Ruin, which is a little bit unfortunate for me, but I do obviously have the Infestations here. I was just counting up how much damage I had as well, so unfortunately I didn't have quite enough just yet. I end up using the Blaze here to be able to deal damage to the 2-4, and then with the AoE, it will end up clearing the board that they have established there. And I do end up playing down the quest here as well. Once again, I am just trying to make sure their board is nice and clear, and it does mean that I get into a rather threatening position as well for them. I use my 2-4 to be able to go face, and then I just play the Stinger down onto the board. It gets extra damage down onto them as well. They end up using Blessing of the Moon, which isn't too much of a concern because there isn't that many cards in their deck that could save them in this position, because I have currently 16 damage in hand, and then I have the 6 extra damage coming from my health. And they end up using their spell here, which is fine. With just 16 damage on their health total, I have lethal coming through just through my spells, and then obviously that's the end of the game there. Yeah, Demon Hunter seems like a relatively strong archetype. I'm not sure how it will look once the expansion is released, but if you've enjoyed the content, please like and subscribe, and bye for now.